Well, my reflections during this special moment are that China has done extremely well in terms of development, in terms of its influence within the world, in terms of the confidence of its people, in terms of the standards of living of the people, in terms of its infrastructure, and I think it's been advanced really quite remarkably, more remarkably than any other country in such a short time, considering its population is so big. I mean, we could talk about population, but I think in my reflections that China is now a very different place and a much better place so with Nixon, who went to China in 1972. Now that did have a big effect on how the West related to China, and I think it was a very good thing. But I don't want to exaggerate it in the sense that I don't want to say, as many Americans do, for example, they say, "Oh, their growth was just because of us." I don't think it was. I think it was because of the Chinese peoples and their initiatives and their hard work and the importance that was attached to education. And I mean, you say that this is the first period still that brought a lot of people out of literacy, especially women. Was a very big achievement in my opinion. Now let's go to the next. The next one was from 78 onwards, the period of opening, and I think that improved the economy. It also improved the what I mentioned before, the status of women. It improved the society. It made people more confident, I think, and it had a very big effect on China's history. I mean, there's a lot to say about there, but I think maybe I'd like to go on to the next period, which I think begins in 2001. And what happened then was that China joined the World Trade Organization. And its trade, it grew to become a very, very big trading. In fact, it's the biggest trading nation in the world by far now. The United States is not as big a trading nation. And I think that China's economy grew very significantly. And I also think that in 2008, when China, when the United States had that financial crisis, a big financial crisis, and China helped bail it out. And I mean, that was extraordinary. And you think of China bailing out the United States. The Americans like to think it's the other way around, but that was, I think that was a very important development. And I think since then, I think that we can see that the period of China's growth, China's rise in the world, and China becoming much more influential down to the present. Now, in the early 70s, when Kissinger went to China in July 1971 to arrange the Nixon visit, which happened eventually in February 72, the following year, I think images changed greatly, and they changed very, very quickly. And I think even overnight, I mean, I recall, people were suddenly much more interested in China. They started, I remember I was involved in this myself in Australia. People started to be interested in learning Chinese a bit, much more than they had before. And people viewed China. They wanted to go there. They wanted to do business with China and things like that. And they wanted to. It was much easier for Westerners to go and research. I mean, they were able to go to places they hadn't been able to go to before. In the last few years, the Americans seemed to. And it was an American initiative. It wasn't a Chinese initiative. I think China is quite happy to deal with the West. They don't. China doesn't feel shy or anything like that about it. But Trump directed all these trade barriers and tried to cut off economic dealings, saying that they only benefited China and they didn't benefit America. The effect on images is very bad. I mean, the effect on the riots, I think, is slight, but I think they're shooting themselves in the foot, in the sense that I think it's done more damage to the West than it has to China. But in terms of images, which is what we're talking about now, it was very, very bad. And just at the moment, I think it's I'm quite worried. And I think those things are still relevant. They want the third plenum of the 20th Central Committee asked for deeper modernisation, and they also asked for a different kind of economic growth, like they said green growth, so sustainable. There's a bit about that, and China's put a lot of effort into doing that, like developing electric vehicles and things like that, and wind power and solar power and things like that. I think those have been, and China seems to me to be doing better, although I mean it's got a lot of difficulties concerning the industry so far, industrial development so far. But I mean, in my impression, I'm not sure what it's like in Chongqing, but in Beijing it's got much better over the last few years than it seems to me. The environment, I mean the national environment, the environment has got much better, and I think also there's more of a push to be more equal. I mean, to get all parts of the society involved in the modernisation, so that it doesn't become too unequal in terms of the economic growth. And I noticed also that one of the things they mentioned and even stressed was that it's global. They want global civilization development, global development, and also global security, and things like that. I mean, and I think that's in other words the community of a common future for humankind. And I think that's those are very good things in terms of modernisation. What I foresee in the future is that the balance between the US and the West and China and the BRICS, the global South, is changing. We're no longer a unipolar world, with just the United States being the only superpower. We're entering into we have entered into a multipolar world, and we are entering into a multipolar world, in which the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, but now it's got other countries there as well, are growing more in their economies and their influence in the world. And I would say that change of balance is going to go on. And I will make a particular comment, and that is that in 1944, just at the end of the Second World War, towards the end of the Second World War, there was a meeting in Bretton Woods, well, you know about it, in which they determined that the dollar was going to be the international currency. The American dollar was going to be the international currency. Now, at that time, it was reasonable in the sense that the US had not been affected by, the homeland of the US had not been affected by the war at all. I mean, it had sent troops to others, but there were no civilian casualties. Well, hardly any. You compare that with Russia, the Soviet Union, where there were millions of them, and China too. And you compare that with Europe, where there were, and so it was rational to have the US dollar. But I think we are now moving into a situation where that is no longer rational. And I know the BRICS are beginning to get their own currency formulations. the dollar is it is still the reserve currency in the sense that people do their trade and so on, but it's not so much as it was. And I think that trend against the American dollar is going to continue, and I think that's really important as far as the world economy is concerned, because that will mean that the main link, so to speak, the main thing that keeps the US the number one will be broken, will be damaged and then broken. I mean, if you look at now compared with before, it's weaker than it was, but it's still the reserve currency, so to speak. It's still the main one. But I think when in 20 years' time, if trends continue going the way they are now, I don't think it will be. I think it's on the way down.